Hey there, this is K4A, Knowledge for All educational videos channel. We are continuing with making game development tutorials. We are starting a new tutorial in GameMaker Studio 2, and we are finally about to start creating the dress-up game in GameMaker. In this video we will not code anything. There will be no programming coding, so if you are waiting for that video, you can stop watching and wait for that video to come out. But for all of you who want to make a game like this dress-up game from following this tutorial from scratch, you should do what we are going to do today in this video, and that is we are going to set up a scene. We are going to set up a basic elements of scene, which means artwork, importing artwork, and a couple of other things. And the things which we are going to talk about today are rooms, sprites, objects, instances, and so on. First of all, we have to create a project in GameMaker, so I hope you have installed the GameMaker on your own. If you haven't, please do so. I haven't made any kind of video on installing GameMaker. Maybe I will do that, but it's a quite simple process. Just download it from Yo-Yo Games and follow their guidelines. It's a few clicks away from installing a GameMaker, and then you will have a shortcut like this, which will open a GameMaker for you. We will wait a few seconds to do that, and then we will create a new project and start to make our game. Still working for some reason, maybe because GameMaker asks me if I want to download the newer version. I have currently 2.2 and there is a 2.3 version. Remind me later. I think we don't need the newest version of GameMaker Studio 2 for those tutorials which I'm going to make on my site, because those tutorials will be very simple, and you can do them in you should be able to do them in any version of GameMaker. On the left side you have some kind of recent projects. You can see I made the dress-up D&D game. That was the game we are making tutorial about today, and I'm making some kind of minor game, town building game. This is my dress-up game, which I've published already, some kind of clicker game and so on, but we don't want to open my games, we want to create new one. And what kind of game we want to create? We want to create drag and drop. So first of all I will click on new, and then I can pick between GameMaker language and drag and drop. As I said in previous tutorial, these GameMaker tutorials on my channel will be probably drag and drop related, and later I will make GameMaker language also. GameMaker language is a programming language which is specific to GameMaker Studio only, so GameMaker Studio only uses programming language which is called GML, GameMaker language. And if you don't like that, or if that is too complex for you, you can use drag and drop system, which is something similar to Scratch drag and drop blocks of code, and that is recommended actually for beginners and intermediate users. And I prefer GameMaker language, but because those tutorials I'm making here are related to aimed towards beginner and intermediate users, so I will use drag and drop, and that way I will learn it myself better, also because I don't use it. So I will click on drag and drop, and I have options for naming a project. I will call it K4A dress up game D&D, and I will save it in my game development folder. GameMaker GMS2, and that's it. Save it. Now the GameMaker starts making that project, and it's very fast because it's an empty project, and this is the basic look of how empty project looks in GameMaker Studio 2. So on your if you look front, this empty space is actually your workspace, and that's also written in top left corner. I can zoom in here, but I'm not sure how to zoom. Yeah, menus. I cannot zoom menus here with control zoom or control plus. Yeah, anyway, I hope you can see everything well enough to read, and this menu on my right side, which now I will detach to show you how it can be detached and docked. On other side, I will dock it from right to left because that's what it's more natural to me, easier to me. That kind of menu is called I think resource tree. It was called like that before. So as its name says resource tree or resources, as it's written here. In that part of the GameMaker you can find your resources, and the resources for the game are what? Images, artwork, sounds like music, sound effects, coding scripts, and so on. So all that stuff and those resources that you need to import in GameMaker to make your game, you can find them on your left side. In my case it was on right side by default. Okay, so what are we going to start with? First of all, there is something which is called room in GameMaker. Let's see what it is. If you click on this icon, which is already white, menu, sorry, and it says room, you see some kind of crossed square icon which says room 0. I'm going to click on it to see what will happen here, and I got open some kind of black screen and white grid, square grid on it. What is that? That is actually how our level looks in a game. Every room is one level, so if you need 20 levels, you will go into rooms menu, right click and create room, pick a create room, and do that 20 times if you need 20 rooms, 100 times if you need 100 rooms, and so on. You can do that by manually by right clicking and creating rooms as many times as you want, but you can also do that by code. If your game, for example, is dynamically driven, so you make rooms like for example procedurally by randomizing some kind of choice in game or something like that, like random dungeons and so on, but that's some other topic and more complex, so we will explain that in some other videos. For today, the only thing you have to learn is that room is a level, and when you click by default GameMaker Studio makes at least one room for you. It doesn't matter if you create it or not, it will be there already when you start a new project. It's called room 0, and when you click on it to open it as I did, you have a black screen, and size of that screen you can read in properties. It says 1024 for width and 768 for height. We will change that to fix the width and height of scene in Scratch, because I'm using artwork from Scratch, but you can see that you can change these aspect ratios and resolution in any way you want. So whatever you want to make your game for mobile, for PC, TV, whatever your platform is, you can change resolution here, and that way adapts to your needs. That's about resolution. Another important thing which we have here are layers. They are in top left corner, and we have two layers also by default, background and instances, and you can make new layers here by clicking on those icons here, like create new background layer, instance layer, tile layer, path layer, asset layer, folder for layers, and delete layers. We are not going to make any new layers here for right now, maybe later, and I will explain those later, but just to be aware that that's what we are going to use. So that's it for the room. You can also switch on grid on and off by clicking on this icon on your right top corner, which says toggle grid with, and the shortcut on the keyboard is G, so you can press the G on your keyboard and it will turn off the grid and the snapping. Okay, that's the room which we have here. Let's see what else do we need. We need sprites. Okay, if you have followed my Scratch tutorials, you already know what sprites are. If you didn't, here is the simplest explanation of it. Sprites are images. They are just a simple image representation of everything you need in your game. Enemies, player, environment, assets, pickups, I don't know. Whatever you need to be seen on the screen, like image of those things I have just mentioned, or for example user interface or so on. Those are called sprites. They are called sprites in GameMaker, in Unity, in Scratch, and in game development in general. So those sprites can be made in some other software, in some other application like Photoshop, Corel Painter, Autodesk, Sketchbook, Paint tool, Inkscape, Krita, I don't know, whatever you like to make your drawings, artwork and images, use that. No one cares or no one knows. As long as it works in your game, that's the biggest problem you have to solve. That's about the sprites, and let's try to import sprites. Why are we importing sprites for our game? First of all, that's because I want my game to look like the one which I have already made in Scratch, and the second thing is that you can actually make sprites in GameMaker Studio. I will show you that fast. Click on this menu folder which says sprites, right click, create sprite, and we will now see in workspace that we have sprite 0, and it's just a blank canvas, a blank square canvas sprite, so nothing on it yet, and dimensions, our size is 64 by 64. Right on it there are two buttons, edit image and import. We are going to import sprites for our game, but you can also go to edit image and draw your own images. So let's try that fast just to show you how to do it. Click on edit image, and there is now image editor application open in GameMaker. So this is like if you remember Scratch, like that Scratch costumes editor where you can draw your sprites. So this is something like that in GameMaker, and tools are very similar. I have eraser, brush or paintbrush, fill tool and so on. I can pick colors here, so I'll pick a green color, pick a fill tool, and I have made a simple square, green square here. So now I can click on this X sign to close the sprite, and I can see that I have my sprite changed into green color sprite, and I have some kind of question mark here. No, it's not question mark, sorry, cross sign in top left corner. And what is that? If you click on this, click on it and try to move it, you can move it with your cursor, or maybe you can click on this menu here and pick top center, top right, middle left, middle center, whatever you want. For most of the time I will pick either middle center, so I want my it's called pivot point. That's the point around which sprite will rotate and scale. So I mostly pick middle center or bottom center sometimes if I need my characters and enemies to be flat on the ground, stick to the ground, but it's mostly middle center, and maybe sometimes top left or top right for user interface, maybe, I don't know. And that's it. This is some kind of sprite. You can rename it here. I can call it SPR green box, simple as that. So you can see now on my left I have SPR green box, and if I try to click on my room, then again on resources and click and drag it, I will get a warning message, unable to drag resources into room, ensure one layer is selected. Okay, so what the GameMaker is trying to tell me, I have opened my room by clicking on this room 0 tab, and then I clicked on resources and sprite green box and drag and dropped it onto the room, but that's not working. So this is not working like Scratch, right? In Scratch I have made a sprite or imported the sprite, and I can and I saw that sprite already on my screen, on my level, on my backdrop. So I had an option to code that sprite and make my game. But in GameMaker Studio things don't work like that. You don't need only sprites, you need some other stuff which we will learn in few seconds. But before that, let me go back to workspace and make a couple of new sprites. I need sprites for girl character, so I will right click and make a new sprite and call it SPR girl character. You don't have to call them like this, like I am calling them, but your choice. So instead of creating a character from the scratch, I'm going to click on this import and try to find that graphics which I have already fixed up for this game. That graphics for me, it's in my dress up GFX folder. For you, I don't know where it's where you will stash it and how to handle it. It's your choice how big your game will be. Then you should be able to calculate how big your character is, how big your clothing items will be, and so on. I have used, as I said before, I have used the artwork from Scratch dress up game. So you can go to Scratch site, open my Scratch dress up game, or just open a Scratch and go to Scratch library, download all the stuff you need for this game. That's character, hats, pants, shirts and shoes, and those will be in SVG format. You just transfer them from SVG, transform them into PNG or JPEG or something like that, and use them for this game. That's what I did myself, and I have change the resolution of those assets 4 times. I made them 4 times smaller, sorry. So what I have done here is that I have downloaded this Harper girl character from scratch site, and I have resized it to be 4 times smaller so it can fit my game. Now I will try to import that one. It's PNG, and GameMaker warns me that this is not an undoable action. Do you want to continue? Yes. So you can see that I have imported now sprite of this girl, which is PNG, so she doesn't have background. Her background is transparent, and that's cool for my game. That's exactly what I need. And I will maybe change pivot point to middle center or bottom center. No, middle center. Oops, I have changed it now to custom middle center. You have to watch out not to click on the left or the right. And I think that's it. Yeah, I have renamed it already, and that's cool. And you can see how size changed automatically on from 64 times 64 to 87 times 242. And that's it. I have made the sprite of girl character. Now I will make a couple of new ones. I will create a sprite and I will call it SPR, and this SPR, I think that's a common thing, common, how it's called, nomenclature, naming. Yeah, it's a common naming convention for naming sprites in GameMaker Studio. So SPR is short for sprite. And what do I need? I need button heads. I will just first I will make sprites, empty sprites, and then I will import them. So I can also right click and duplicate this one and change it to sprite button heads. What do I need else? I need shirts. I need pants. And I need shoes. So this, I don't know if this is smart for me to do it like this manually, or you should be maybe to cut these videos, but I think there are not too many of those sprites. I have a sprite for button head 1. Yeah, I can import it right away, so I will try to find the button head 1 small, that's it. Middle center, that's cool. Duplicate that sprite. This one will be button head. Oops. Yeah, I have unintentionally clicked on edit image instead of import, so I will import head 2 small. Yes, looks good. Duplicate head 3, import head 3 small, so heads are finished. Now let's go to SPR shirts, shirt, SPR button, shirt 1, right, import shirts small, cool, middle center, cool, right click, duplicate, rename to shirt 2, sprite button shirt 2, import shirt small. Okay, yes, bye. Duplicate sprite button shirt 3, this isn't so slow as I thought. We're almost there, so I need a sprite for pants, only 2 pants blue. Yes, middle center, SPR button pants 1, That's it. Right click, duplicate, rename to sprite button pens 2, import pink one, middle center, yes, and last is the shoes, sprite button shoes 1, import. And this kind of workflow, although for some of you will be boring and you will hate it, it's something which is needed for every game. So no matter how big or small your game is, you will have to import your graphics or make it into in GameMaker from the scratch, and there is no way to speed that up very much. Maybe you can make some art procedurally, but it won't look as good as this. So we have imported our sprites for buttons for shoes, button for pants, button for shirts, button for hats. And because my buttons in the game which I have made in Scratch, the buttons look exactly the same as clothing on the character, so I don't have to import 2 times the same graphics, one head for the button and one for the clothing, character clothing. I only have to import sprite, the image, once, and I will use the same sprite 2 times, one for the button and one for the clothing, because it looks the same. Let's try now to find the sprite for button heads, import, and buttons are here, and I have only one button here, so I can middle center. I will have to add text here, so let's do it. So you see that I have empty button here, and I need to say to have a sign which is saying heads on it. So I will go on editing this image, then maybe clicking here on a new layer, because I want to add layer for text, and I can either type this text here with like this, heads, but this doesn't look very good to me. I don't know. Yeah, not really. I will select it now and delete it, and instead I will use some kind of yellow color and try to write it with my mouse and head. It will look ugly, but it will work. So we need heads here. Not very beautiful, but I think it will read well. Not well, but good enough. Heads. Let's see how it looks. Heads, cool. So I will do only one. Maybe I will make this one later. Yeah, maybe I should just import the blank, at least blank button. Okay, 2 more and that's it. Okay, so I think we have imported all the sprites we needed. Yeah, one more. very important. Create sprite, and I will call this one SPR background. We need one sprite for our background, and I have that one already here in my folder. You can also download these backgrounds from Scratch. They are called backdrops in Scratch, and Scratch size, Scratch resolution is 480 times 360. You can see that on this size of this image. So let's go to room and change this width to 480 to 360, which is the size of the Scratch screen. So we will have our game look exactly the same as in the Scratch, and you can see how small that is, but I think it will look good at the end. Okay, so how to add a background on GameMaker level, GameMaker room. We have this sprite background image which we have just imported with right click on sprites, create sprites, then go into import button, click on import button and pick image you want for your game to be in background. But where to add it? We have, I think earlier we have some kind of background folder here in resources tree, but now it's not there. This is a GameMaker Studio 2, that was in GameMaker Studio 1. But what do we have here now is that we have a background layer in GameMaker Studio 2. So when you click on those layers, you can see how those menus here below them, drop down menus, change. So when you click on background, you see that you have background layer properties, and the first option below that says no sprite. So let's try to find some sprite there for our background and see what happens. Cool. So our background changed to what we need, but what do I see here is that I see that there are some kind of artifacts, some kind of dots, like squares, pixel squares on edges. I haven't noticed that before, so I have to change that. So I will go to my sprite which is used for background, edit image, and yeah, I can see them also here. So I want to erase them to cover them with the same color of this background. So first I need to select color picker to pick this color, and then go with the paintbrush tool maybe, and just this is maybe too slow. I will try with rectangle tool. Yeah, this is much faster. So you can see how sometimes you will have to fix some of your problems and improvise from time to time in GameMaker Studio and every other game engine. So what I'm doing here now, I'm fixing my background sprite because it has artifacts, pixelated dots on the edges. I have picked the same color as the background, and I have picked the rectangle tool, and I'm covering all of them. You can see, simple as that. Okay, close this sprite, go to room and see. Yeah, it looks good. How am I going to test my game? In Scratch you could do that just by clicking on the screen or clicking on the green flag, start the game icon, and in GameMaker Studio you have to click on this play button or press F5, and what will happen now, the GameMaker will try to compile whatever you made, and it will show your game in windowed mode, just like that. So we have our game like this, and this is the resolution which we will have on our screen. It's very small, but it works. We haven't coded anything yet, so there is no interaction on it yet. Okay, so we have actually made all the sprites now needed for our game. What is next? As I have explained a few minutes ago, I cannot click and drag those sprites onto the screen. GameMaker says that's not a good practice, that is not working in GameMaker game development, so we have to do something else. And what is that something else? That's called objects. What are objects in GameMaker Studio? In a game in Scratch engine, we didn't have to make objects. We didn't have objects. We only use sprites. But in more complex game engines like Unity, Unreal, and so on, I don't know, Godot, GameMaker, in most of those game engines you have to make some element, some asset which is called game object. You have a new folder for it, just like we had this sprite folder in our resources menu. We have a objects folder in our resources menu. So click on the objects folder, right click on it and create objects, and you will be transferred into workspace if you weren't there already, and you will have new object on the screen. First of all, let's rename it into obj. That's also common naming convention in GameMaker Studio, to call all the objects, to name them with obj, and then write whatever you want to name them. So I will name this one obj underscore character or player character, girl character. How did I call this sprite? Yeah, girl character. Cool. So I have renamed my object into obj girl character, but what I still have no idea what that is. Objects are some kind of, you can think of them as a beginner, if you're a beginner, like some kind of container for your sprites, for your code, and for everything you make in GameMaker. They are like some kind of cookie cutters, and we will explain that later. So they are very, very important in GameMaker and other game engines, and everything you want to make in a game to be interactive, it has to be objects. So if you want to make a player which moves left and right, you have to make an object for it, then add sprite to it, then add code to it. We have already imported the sprites we needed for our game, so let's try to find the one for our girl character. So I have made the obj girl character. Now I'm trying to find sprite for it. The first option below this name of the obj is sprite, and right there is some kind of field which says no sprite. Click on it and you will see all the sprites that you have imported for your game, and also some kind of bar to help you to see those sprites bigger or smaller, whatever you like in your workflow. I will use them as big as possible because we are making a YouTube video of it, so everyone can see it. Okay, so and again, you don't have to import all the sprites like I did. First import all the sprites, then make the objects. You can go one by one, import one sprite, make one obj, and so on. So I just made it, I thought it was more simple to import all sprites. Yeah, I have some problem now that I have my sprite out of my view. Yeah, now it's okay. And now it's not. I will have to resize it a little bit. Okay, so what do I need to find here? I need to find the girl character sprites. Here it is. So I have made an obj girl character and it has a sprite girl character for it. So, and there are tons of other options here, but we don't need them for this game. So just go to room 0 to see our room, how it looks. So far it's empty. And now if I'm in, I'm still in background layer, click selected. So take a look what will happen. I have clicked on resources tab here, and now I'm clicking on obj girl character and I'm trying to move it, and again it says you're not going to do it. The selected layer does not accept the drag resources. Please select an appropriate layer like obj instance layer, sprite, asset, or so on. So again, GameMaker is trying to help us, and GameMaker is saying to us, okay, you have selected the background layer and you are trying to import obj into it. That is not allowed. You have to click on instances layer, and then click and drag on obj, and then you will be able to drag your character on the screen. Simple as that. So we have an obj imported onto the screen. Let's click on the run to see if it works. Okay, our game looks already much better, so something happened. Nice. Let's go back to workspace, to resources, and what else resources do I need for scene setup? I need obj button heads. And which sprite do I need for that? I need sprite button heads. Cool. Now go to room. Now click on resources. Now click on obj button heads. Click and drag it. And if you don't like this console window here, click on this arrow to hide it, so we will have more space. So we have heads button on our screen, so it's in our level now. Cool. And I can click and drag it wherever I like, and I can click on this grid or press G to snap it like this, and now it snaps to the snap I have defined here. I have defined grid is 32 times 32, so all of my images will snap on those 32 grid size. I don't like that. I will turn off the grid so I can now move it without problem. Okay, is that all? No, I need other stuff like I will duplicate this one, right click on it, duplicate, and I will rename it into obj button shirts, and I will click and pick sprite button shirts for it. Cool. I can close it for now. I can close this one, and I can also, with the pressing control and scrolling my zoom wheel, I can zoom in and out, so I can move these panels as much as I like, so I can work more easily in this workspace. So for example, if we have lots of windows open, you can zoom out like this, move them left and right, pen and so on, and you can also use this zoom in and zoom out buttons, or click on this zoom reset to go into default. Okay, I will now click on obj button shirt, right click, duplicate, rename it into button pants, and I will change the sprite into sprite button pants, which I have imported earlier. Same thing again, last time for the buttons, change it into obj button shoes, and pick the sprite button shoes. Close that one. Go to room, click on resources, click and drag obj pants, click and drag obj shirts. I'm a little bit confused here because I haven't typed any text on them yet, but here they are like a placeholders here. Cool, so this looks much better now. What else do I need here for my game? First of all, if I add lots of stuff here, I will get crowded fast. I don't like that. I like my workspace to be clean, and so I can have more control and I can see what I'm doing. So I will click here with right click, and instead of create object, I will go and click on add group. Group is like some kind of folder for your objects or sprites, and I will call this group obj buttons. I will click and drag it on the top, and now I will click and drag those buttons into that group, so I can have everything much cleaner here, and I can open and close that folder like this. Okay, buttons are made. Let's go and make something else. I need to create object. Right click, create object. Which one? Button head 1, and I need a sprite. Which one? Sprite button head 1. Simple as that. I will right click and duplicate this one. I will call it button head 2. I will pick another sprite. Which one? Sprite button head 2. Simple as that. Close it. Right click, duplicate, button head 3. Pick sprite. Which one? Sprite button head 3. And so on. Those were the heads. We need other stuff. We need shirts. So obj, yeah, I forgot to rename buttons into obj buttons. We'll do that later. Obj button shirt 1, sprite shirt 1. Right click, duplicate, obj button shirt 2, sprite button shirt 2. Close it. Duplicate, obj button shirt 3, sprite button shirt 3. Close. I can duplicate shirt 3, rename it into obj button pants 1, and then pick sprite button pants 1. Then duplicate it, rename it into obj button pants 2. Pick button pants 2. Simple as that. You see how fast it goes. Duplicate it, rename it into obj button shoes 1. Duplicate shoes 2. Duplicate shoes 3, and I think we have them all. I have made one error here. I have called those button heads only button head instead of obj button head. Obj button head. And obj button head. And because I have explained it already, if you haven't seen my Scratch dress up game, go and look it on the internet or on YouTube channel on videos. I have used the same artwork for buttons, clothing button sprites and clothing on the character. So all I have to do now is duplicate those objects and rename them. Instead of obj button head 1, this will be obj head 1. Duplicate obj button head 2 and call it obj head 2. Duplicate obj button head 3 and call it obj head 3. Same with shirts. Instead of obj button, I will rename it into obj shirt, because this will be the shirt which I will use to put as the clothing on the girl character. Same with shirt 2. Same with shirt 3. So we don't need buttons, we need clothing. That's why we are changing those names into pants instead. Obj button pants instead of obj button 2 pants. We need obj pants 2 and shoes, and I think that's it. That's it. I need to make couple of groups, couple of folders, just to see everything more clear here. So right click, add group, and I will call this group button heads. I will drag it above, and I will drag button heads, obj button heads, into it. I need the group for button shirts. Obj button shirts 1, obj button shirts 2, and obj button shirts 3. Yeah, and another for add group for button pants. So obj button pants 1, obj button pants 2, group for button shoes. Obj button shoes 1, obj button shoes 2. You don't have to do all of this, but I think it's much clearer later to work like this. New group will be hats. So obj hat 1, obj hat 2, obj hat 3. Then I need group for shirts. So obj shirt 1, shirt 2, shirt 3. I need a group for pants. And the last but not the least, shoes. And it doesn't work every time for me, you can see it on your own. But we will fight our way through groups. Shoes here, pants here, shirts here, hats here, button shoes, button pants, button shirts, button hats, buttons. Okay, and girl character. Cool. So we have made all the sprites which we have needed here. I will make a group for them, but don't worry, I will make that offline. And we have imported all the sprites, added sprites to make objects. And what else do we need here? We need something which is called instances. We actually already made that. How did we do it? When you drag your object from resources into the room, you are making an instance of that object. That means a copy. Like from cookie cutter, when you make cookies, all of the cookies are copies of the cookie cutter. So the original cookie cutter is this obj button here, here, and so on. They are all cookie cutters, but when you click and drag them into room, they become cookies instances. So you can see that by clicking on one of those objects which we have dragged into the screen, like this obj button heads, and you can see above its name there is something which is named inst. That's short for instance. So that number shows that this is the instance of this object. This is a cookie which was made with this cookie cutter. This is a little bit confusing maybe for now, but I will explain that in more details in later videos, because this one is already too long. But for now you have to trust me that this is all we need to set up our scene. The rest of the stuff like clothing on the screen and clothing on the girl, so obj button, heads button, shirts button, pants button, shoes will show up when I click on heads button, shirts button, and so on. So that means when I click on button, that will be some kind of interaction. That means coding, programming. So we will add that in later videos. Those objects, those instances, those sprites will not be on the screen unless we click on these buttons here. That is something which is different from the Scratch. If you remember working in Scratch, we had all the sprites on the screen, and then we have hidden some of them not to show and show only when we click on those buttons. But GameMaker works differently. GameMaker is more complex, more professional, and you want to show resources on the screen only and import them only when something is important, something is working, and so on. So until then you have to save your resources, your memory, and so on. So that's because we're not going to drag and drop our objects on the screen. We will handle them by code, by programming, and we will show them on the screen only when we click on the buttons, and that means in runtime, and that means we will do that in later videos. For now on, I think this is it. You can only thing you can do yourself is that you can go to this sprite button, shirts, pants, and shoes, and try to write that text on those buttons on your own, because if I do that here, you will probably go crazy on how long does it take to make it. And same with these sprites here. Please click on this sprites folder menu name and go into add group and make a couple of groups, one for buttons, one for button heads, one for button shirts, one for button pants, and one for button shoes, and that's it. I think that will be more than enough for this first video. I will just go now and save the project, and that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Sorry it probably took me too long to make this video, but that's the way it goes. Now we have everything we need from the artwork in our GameMaker Studio. So in the next video we will start coding finally. Bye for now.